This is coffee number 5. I'm your host, Lara Schmoisman. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to coffee number 5. My coffee is ready and it's hot and warm. And I was thinking today, and through COVID, I had, well, you guys know, I was always in a verge of being pioneer in everything I try, but not because I really want to be a pioneer, because I like to try new things. And I had to learn by myself. And like, for example, this digital world, when I started, it didn't exist. So I wasn't able to go and take classes, then I end up teaching about digital mediums, and which is great, but I always had to adapt. I had to be aware of the innovations, and I still do every day. We have new things and we need to adapt. And I think that that's one of the things that keep me my tippy toes in one hand, but in the other hand, it keeps me young. And I always need to keep learning and learning and learning. So today we invited Jason Feifer. I think I said it right. No, I didn't. So how?
No, Pfeiffer, like Pfeiffer, like Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh,
Jason
like
Feifer.
Michelle Pfeiffer. Okay,
yes.
So we got Jason Feifer. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
Jason has an incredible career. He's not only one of the editors-in-chief of Entrepreneur, he also wrote an incredible book. And it's coming up now in September, right?
That's right. Out September 6th.
September 6th. So I can't wait to hear more about your book and to be in the launch. But tell us a little more. How did you come up with this concept about, at some point you had to come and hit you, say, I really want to write about this. What happened?
So, well, thanks for having me. The book is called Build for Tomorrow, an action plan for embracing change, adapting fast, and future-proofing your career. And to answer your question, it really goes back to the moment in which I became editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, which was in 2016. I started to get this question all the time whenever I would be on podcasts or speaking at events or whatever. Anybody would be asking me something. And the question was, what are the qualities of the most successful people that I was meeting? Because the thing is, I am just so fortunate to be able to meet with the most successful people in the world and also just the smartest Main Street entrepreneurs. And so I should be able to pattern match and see what it is that's driving success across such a broad spectrum of people. And I didn't really know the answer to this at first. It was a really interesting question, made me think, and I thought I should know the answer to what it is that drives the most success. And so I started to talk to people. I spent years talking to people, studying it, exploring this idea, and trying to figure out what it was that all these people had in common. And the answer I came to realize is adaptability. That is the thing that they all have in common, whether they are running global companies or they're just succeeding in their local community. The people who were able to adapt to change the smartest and the fastest were the ones that were the most successful over the long term. So then the question, of course, is, well, how are they doing it? And it was clear in talking to people that the most successful, or rather, it was clear that that adaptability is not something you're born with. It is something you can learn across time. And so how do people learn it, and what were they doing? And I struggled to figure it out until the pandemic, because the pandemic hit this moment of reset for everyone all at the same time. And then you could see some people get ahead and you could see other people get stuck. And I came to realize that change happens for everybody in 4 phases. Phase 1, panic. Phase 2, adaptation. Phase 3, new normal. Phase 4, wouldn't go back. That moment where we say, I found something so new and valuable that I wouldn't want to go back to a time before I had it. And that is the thing that everyone needs to get through, but that everyone moves through at different paces. A lot of people get stuck at panic. Maybe they even give up at panic, or a lot of people get really comfortable at new normal. And they say, well, now finally I found some kind of comfort and I'm not going to push myself any further. But the most successful people were the ones that were able to get to wouldn't go back. And that is the reason I wrote the book, because I saw these people doing it and I started to understand the mindset that they had the tools that they were using, the way that they were approaching moments of big change. And I felt like this is something that's really helpful for everyone. And I want to record it.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question because I honestly believe that everyone can change, everyone
Yeah.
can learn, but I also believe that it gets harder. If you leave a gap, you need to adapt as things happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. Right.
So how do you do it? I mean, give us some tips here, some juicy details on how you get there. I mean, the fear and the panic is totally true. I've seen it in the pandemic. So many
Yeah.
people hating, and I cannot do this for in Zoom. And other people say, okay, let's give it a try and
Right.
see how it works.
That's right. So look, there are a lot of strategies and we should talk about a whole bunch of them. But I think the overarching thing is that if you feel like you are not adaptable, now is a great time to just start training yourself for the future. This isn't something that you just switch on, and it isn't just some kind of order of buttons to push, at which point you will be able to navigate change. There are lots of things that you can think about now and things that you can do. But what I found is that the most adaptable people have over time taught themselves all of these different ways to think and approach their career and their work so that they are building adaptability into what they do. So, but I mean, let's talk about something that people can do for the future, and then also something that people can start to do right now.
Let me ask you a question before you jump into that, because you
Sure.
said something that it triggered for me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I see like in education, there are a lot of people coming out of college, and
Yeah.
I see that. Do you think that education is preparing us to adapt to change?
Oh, I think it's too broad to make a statement about that. I mean, there's for every single person who has some kind of educational experience has a different educational experience, right? And for as much as we want to cookie cutter things, the problem is that we have roughly cookie cutter solutions for infinite problems and experiences. So I think that there are some people who will have learned quite a lot from their educational experience. I mean, I'll give you one, for example. Unlike most of the, I mean, just a personal example, unlike most of the kids who I went to high school with, who went to college, if they went to college, they went to college locally and they went to college with people that they already knew. I didn't. I grew up in South Florida. I went to a random little liberal arts college in Worcester, Massachusetts, where I knew absolutely nobody. And that was a great experience. It enabled me to hit reset on the way that I thought of myself. When you're, as anybody I'm sure has had this experience, by the time you're done with high school, you've been with the same kids for a long time, but you have evolved as a person. But because you've been with the same kids, everyone has this perception of you as how you were 4 8 years earlier. And it feels very limiting, and it locks you into a way in which you're going to act and relate to other people. And I found it to be just an amazing help to leave that environment, leave literally everybody I knew, and go to an environment where I was able to redefine myself and explore. And that was it was a altering experience. But other people might not have had that, or they might have done something totally different. Maybe they went to a local college, but they also put themselves into different circumstances where they were able to learn something. Anyway, the point is, I don't think that I could really blanketly say education just as an institution does or does not shape us. I think that ultimately the best thing that we can do during our education is the same thing that we can do during our careers. And that is to be putting ourselves into situations where we learn something that we didn't know, or that nobody was asking us to learn. That is the key to me to having a career that evolves. I mean, just to kind of move into like post education, give you an example. I came to realize over the course of my career that I was doing this thing. I didn't have language for it at the time, but now I do. I call it work your next job. What I realized was that in front of me, in front of you, in front of your listeners right now, everybody has two sets of opportunities. Opportunity set A, opportunity set B. Opportunity set A is everything that's asked of you. So you show up at work and you have a job to do. You have a boss who's expecting you to do things, or you run your own company and you have certain KPIs, key performance indicators that you have to meet. And these are the things that you're judged on. Opportunities at B are the things that zero people are going to ask you to do, that nobody is judging you on at all, but that are available to you. All the things that are available to you that nobody's asking you to do. That's opportunity set B. What could that be? Well, it could be something at work. It could be something that people joining a project, learning a new task, changing departments, being involved in something. But it could also be something outside of work, learning how to podcast, for example, or learning a new skill, or whatever the case is. These are things nobody's asking you to do. My argument is that opportunity set B is always more important, infinitely more important. It is always better for you to focus on opportunity set B, which is the thing in which you are exploring, creating, discovering, than it is to just focus on opportunity set A, where you are fulfilling and checking boxes. That's not to say, just to be clear, not to say opportunity set A is unimportant. If you ignore it, you'll get fired.
It's really important is to keep your job, but the only way to grow is to create opportunities for yourself.
That's right. That's right.
Your set B.
And that's what I mean, look, and so you can do that at any time. You can do that while you are getting an education. You can do that while you're working. You know why I'm talking to you right now? I'll tell you, it's because of a series of opportunity set B decisions that I made throughout my career. When I was at Fast Company years and years ago, I was a print editor. There was a video department that started. Nobody asked me to be a part of the video department, but I put myself in front of the camera. I thought it would be interesting. In doing so, I learned how to talk on camera. I learned how to speak in this kind of microphony voice. And that gave me these skills to speak on stage, to eventually launch a podcast. And then when I was interviewing for Entrepreneur Magazine editor-in-chief, one of the things they really liked about me was that I was able to go out and represent the brand to the public. That was all because I learned how to do this thing at Fast Company that nobody asked me to do. So the more that you push yourself, the more it will become habit to push yourself. And the more you will always think the things that are not in front of me are the things that I need to seek out. Again, that's not something that you can just wake up and start doing today, but you can start doing it. You can start thinking about it, maybe start making a list of, here are the things that I find interesting. Which one do I want to devote some time to now? And the more that you shift that focus, the more you will train yourself, and the more you will start to learn skills that you do not know the ROI on for now, but that I am guaranteeing you will come in use later.
Absolutely. I want to give you an example, for example.
Sure.
An example, for example, yes. And my audience already know this story, that when in 2008, I really needed a job. So I had all this career. I work in television, in film, in online. I did all these things in my life because I always was a go-getter and I didn't care. I just went in and learned, and I never had a problem with that. But then in 2008, the economy hit and I needed a job. I went to a headhunter, a friend of a friend who was working for agencies. And she told me, with this resume, you're never going to be working in an agency. Nobody's going to hire you. And what are you going to do to say good to that? Of course, I cried a little, but then I didn't let what that woman said, all those things that I learned and I taught myself, got me to own my own agency in the future. You never know when things are going to take you. And I wasn't employable, but I was an entrepreneurial, and I was able to get my own agency because of those skills.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that's exactly what you should have done, because there are a lot of people who would have been told, you just don't have the skills for this. And they would have said, oh, well, I guess not. And that would have been the end. And they would have pursued something else. But you can create your own opportunity. You just simply can. It is hard. It requires a lot of work.
Of course.
But it is the great opportunity in front of you. And it is really simply a matter of whether or not you're going to dedicate yourself to fulfilling it.
Yeah. And this is a job that you need to do every day. It doesn't stop.
No.
You need to, no.
But the thing is that it doesn't sound that, the funny thing is that if you're not doing that right now, then saying it doesn't stop and then you have to do it every day can sound really exhausting. But once you make it a habit, It's not exhausting. It is just simply the way that you think. It is the equivalent to how you think now. You don't feel any different. It just is the way. And this is the way that I operate. I mean, I am constantly putting myself into new situations. And I know that sometimes that can be very, very uncomfortable to do that, to try something that you do not have mastery over, and to know that getting that kind of mastery is going to be very difficult. I'll tell you, one of the things that I learned along the way in putting myself into these kind of uncomfortable situations is I came up with this phrase. It's really, really helpful to me. I'll tell you, maybe it can be helpful for others.
Yeah, please.
So, as I told you, one of the things that I learned how to do was public speaking. It did not come naturally. I have no experience in it. I never took any classes. But I was starting to, I developed a skill set of speaking on microphones, and I had the opportunity. People were inviting me, and I thought, well, I shouldn't turn this down. And so the very first time that I went to give a talk on stage to a group of entrepreneurs, I was in Scottsdale, Arizona, years and years ago. I was opening for Marcus Lemonis of CNBC's The Prophet. I was really nervous. I had never done anything like this. I had no idea how to hold myself. I had no idea if my message was going to resonate. I didn't know if Marcus was in the building somewhere and was going to listen to me, make a fool of myself. I didn't know what was going on. And I'm standing there, and I practiced. And I'm standing there on the side of the stage, and this guy is, whatever, he was the event MC, and he was introducing me, and I'm listening to him, and I'm thinking, in a couple seconds, I'm going to walk out on stage, and it's do or die. And then this thought popped into my head. This is the line that I told you that I found so useful. And that line was,
I'm waiting.
I know. Well, I got to build up the suspense. The line was, I can't wait to do this the second time. I can't wait to do this the second time. Like, once you think about doing something new like that, you start to realize that the thing that you are about to do for the first time, it doesn't matter if it sucks or not, because the entire point of it is simply to have gotten it done, to move on to the second time. Because as soon as think about it, I walked out on stage. The second that I am done on stage, I know so much more than I did before. I know infinitely more. I know how people are going to react. I know how I'm going to be. I know things I didn't know before. And the only way to know that stuff is to go out and do it. And the only way to do it is to know that everything does not ride or die on that one time that you're doing it. That, in fact, doing it for the first time, the only purpose that it serves is to get you to the second time, because the second time is where you have more information, and you can calibrate, and you can improve, and you can get to the point where it feels natural. And now, every single time that I am facing some kind of moment where I feel unsure, that is what I tell myself. And we have to be okay. I talked to Ryan Reynolds, star of stage and screen. I don't know if he was stage, but star of screen, certainly. And he also has an advertising agency and a number of other companies. And he told me this great thing that I really love, which was that in order to be good at something, you have to be willing to be bad. And it's true. In order to be good at something, you have to be willing to be bad. Again, this goes back to, as we were talking about, it goes back to a mindset that you develop and a habit structure that you build, because I understand that waking up one morning and just saying, you know what, I'm going to do a bunch of things that are uncomfortable the first time isn't easy. But the more you do it, the more you prove to yourself that it is the only path, and it's actually a perfectly fine path. That once you go out and do something uncomfortable once, it's so much easier to do it the second time and the third time and the fourth time, because you start to understand your own capacity to adapt and to improve, and you start to trust yourself more. And that just builds upon itself to the point where you can start to do just about anything, and just know that the whole point of it is to get better at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to bring back this conversation that we were having today of
Sure.
The podcast, that sometimes life throw you something your way and you need to adapt again. And you had one of those days today, and we had to you had to adapt, and it's keep learning from those experiences. You learn how to shift and change things, to adapt and to keep going, because you cannot stop every time life throw you a curveball.
Yeah, that's right. That's totally right. Right. So what you're referring to is what we were chatting about before we started recording, which I was telling you that this morning at 9 a.m. So we're recording at 4:24 on a Monday, and 4:24 p.m. on a Monday. And at 9 a.m. this morning, I went to drop my 3-year-old off at his daycare camp or whatever. And they came out and made this announcement that a kid in the school had tested positive for COVID. And so if your name is on this list, then you're not coming to school for not sure how long yet. Turns out it's going to be like 3 days. And my kid was on the list. So I had to take him home. I had to cancel a whole bunch of meetings. My wife and I had to rearrange our schedules. She's with him right now. I'm totally scattered because my brain is totally scattered. I hope you don't hear that in the way that I'm answering questions, but maybe you do. That's okay, because that's real life. And I'm very, very annoyed. I hate it. To me, frankly, I think that the solution at this point to trying to like keep kids safe is actually the problem, and that kids should just be able to go to school because it's just wreaking havoc on families. But we got to deal with it, and so we do. And so I make decisions about what needs to happen today and what can change and move, and I have to make a conscious decision for myself about how I want to feel, because I could feel very frustrated. And I did this morning. You know what I did actually is I live in New York. I tracked down the email address for the New York City Department of Health, and I sent them an email saying this is crazy and we have to stop disrupting families' life because kids need to be in school. But after that, I got on with my day, or whatever version of my day I could have, and that is simply the best that we can do. And it reminds me of a line I like to use a lot with my work, which is I will do the best work with the resources available. I think it's a really important way to think. I think oftentimes we compare ourselves to what we would be like or what our work would be like if we had more resources. Well, this magazine would be a lot better if I had double the staff. This job would be a lot better if I had double the budget. But you know what? You don't. You just don't have that, right? It's like this book would be a lot better if I had double the time to write it. But you know what? I didn't. What I had was the time that I had, the resources that I had. So let's stop comparing ourselves against what we do not have and start instead saying, I will do the best work with the resources available. Very, very important. Of course, we will do the best work. We have to be conscious that the resources available are the resources available. I when I started at Entrepreneur Magazine, I was shocked at how a magazine of high quality, a national magazine, was put out with the size of the staff. It's small. It's a small staff. Be straight up. And my career has been working at larger magazines with larger staffs. So I started to think back to like my first magazine job. I worked at Boston Magazine. My entire job as a junior editor was to edit 8 pages of the magazine. 8 pages. That's it. Every month. And how did I do that? What else did I do with my time? I started to wonder, what did I do with my time? And then I realized, well, here's what I did with my time. The editor-in-chief would come over to my desk and he would have printed out a page that I worked on. He would have circled the caption that I wrote in the photo. And he would have said, I think this caption can be funnier. And then I would have sat there for 2 hours trying to come up with every possible variation of a caption for this photo. And then I would come to his office with like 25 new ideas. And I would sit outside his office for 30 minutes while he wrapped up some other conversation. And then I would show it to him and then he would circle the thing and he would say that one. And then that was the one that would go in the magazine. And you know what? Now, when I look back on it, I think, what a waste of time. Nobody, zero people ever have picked up a magazine because the captions are funny. They just haven't. They haven't done it. It was not useful. It was not a useful spend of time or resources. And so instead, I'm going to look at the staff that I have at my magazine, and I'm going to say, all right, we are going to take our immense talents, and the people on this team are immensely talented. There aren't that many of them, but they're all immensely talented. And we are going to focus on putting our talents to the best use possible. And that means we're not going to spend a lot of time on captions because nobody cares. Instead, we're going to spend our time on other things, and we're going to make the best thing that we can with the resources available, because that is the only way to operate.
I love that you said that, because this is one of the things that I talk in my programs a lot. And I believe that any entrepreneur needs to know first your resources, and then you can start and work. And I call resources time, budget, team, and knowledge. If you
Right.
don't have the knowledge, it's something what you were saying before. You need to adapt and learn what you need as an entrepreneur or a new business owner, what you will need to achieve certain results. And can you do it alone? Do you need a team? Do you need how much money you're willing to put, or you have to put? If you don't know your resources, it's really hard to move on.
That's right. That's completely right. And you also shouldn't think of your, like, you need to work within your resources, and you need to understand your resources. You're 100% correct. But also do not underestimate your ability to maximize those resources.
Absolutely.
I hear over and over again, people tell me that limitations are in fact their greatest strength. I mean, hell, just to be clear, Ryan Reynolds said that. Ryan Reynolds, movie star, runs an amazing ad agency. He told me that he loves small budgets. He was like, if you're given a large budget, what the first thing you do is you think, okay, how can I blow this budget? So how should we have like aliens coming down and blowing up buildings? Is that what we should do? But when you shrink your budget down, you're forced to focus on what really matters, which isn't the aliens blowing up the building. It's the clever idea. It's the thing that's going to connect humanly. So you need to be able to not just live within your resources, but also see that as an opportunity to push yourself to be more creative. And by the way, you mentioned time. I'll give you one quick thing that I've found about time. I do a lot. In addition to being the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine and writing and now marketing this book, Build for Tomorrow, I make 2 podcasts, do a lot of speaking. I'm a startup advisor, do some television development. I have 2 kids. It's a lot. And people ask me how I do it. And the answer is, because time is like a balloon. That's how. So people often will say, if people often will say, I don't have the time. If only I had the time. If only I had the time. Oh, I would write a book if only I had the time. But here's the thing. If only I had the time doesn't exist. There is no time where you will ever, quote unquote, have the time, where you will suddenly just like have open time in your calendar. That doesn't exist. It doesn't exist because of Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law states that work expands to fit the time allotted. It's totally true. However much time you have to do the work is how much time that work will take you. So don't think of yourself as waiting around to have the time, because you will never have the time. Instead, what you do is you have to make the time, which I really sounds pat, but think of it like this. And this is why I said time is like a balloon. Nobody ever expands a balloon to fit air into the balloon. That is not how you blow up a balloon. You don't expand the balloon and then put air into the balloon. Instead, you blow air into the balloon and then the balloon expands. Think of time the exact same way. How will your time grow? When you put pressure on it. That's how it will grow. Time expands under pressure. So the more that you add, the more you will be forced to think about all the inefficiencies you have in your current system. You will find ways to do that stuff better, or you will drop stuff that don't really help you. And the more that you do that, the more you will ultimately, quote unquote, have more time, even though it's the same amount of time.
Yeah, it's not that you don't have it. You just make the time for it.
Yeah.
And it's also about what's more important.
Right. But this is the thing.
And all people about making decisions.
And it's hard to know what's more important until you are really forced to consider what is the best spend of the next 20 minutes. That's when you really have to make these hard decisions. And if you don't, then you will dawdle and you will spend time on Twitter.
Absolutely. Jason, thank you so much for being here, having coffee with me. It was a pleasure, and to hear I can't wait to get your book. I'm so pumped about it. And
thank you.
It's September 6th, right?
September 6th. So,
okay.
But yes. So yes, September 6th. I don't know what else to tell you. Yeah. So
well, whenever you have your link, we'll add it to the chapter notes so everyone can know where to find it.
Yeah, fantastic. You can find it wherever you find books. So Amazon, your local bookstore, Barnes & Noble, doesn't matter. Again, it's called Build for Tomorrow, a action plan for adapting fast I probably messed that up. It's funny. I got to tell you, I've interviewed a bazillion authors and they always mess up their subtitle. And I always think, why do you mess up your subtitle? It's your book. And now I do it all the time. But here it is. I'm holding it. Built for Tomorrow, an action plan for embracing change, adapting fast, and future-proofing your career. Maybe one day I will have that memorized.
Well, you did great. Thank you so much for having coffee with me. And to you guys, I'll see you next week with more coffee number 5.
Thanks so much.
It was so good to have you here today. See you next time. Catch you on the flip side. Ciao, ciao.